Hello and welcome to Behind the Headlines on WTAJ Plus. I'm Marty Radovanic, and we're really pleased because we have a guest today that I have to be honest. I floated the idea of this with our guest, and I said, I don't know. Do you think he'd be willing to talk? And we made an inquiry, and he said, sure. Which I have to be honest with you, Perry, that surprised me a little bit. And I'm talking to Perry Sook, who is our guest on this episode, but he's also, as it says underneath his name, chairman and CEO of Nexstar. And in the short order, Nexstar owns WTAJ and another, how many stations right now, Perry?
Another 200 around the country, 40 states.
And I understand, you're a Du Bois native?
That is correct.
So from Du Bois to Dallas, was there anything in your early life in Pennsylvania that you would have imagined yourself being where you are now?
Well, there were a lot of stops between Du Bois and Dallas, as you can
understand.
imagine. But I grew up a Pittsburgh Pirates fan and listening to Bob Prince on radio and television, and I got into the business because I wanted to be the next Bob Prince.
All right.
That's kind of how it all started.
Have you ever been
grad of Du Bois High School and lifelong resident of Clearfield County until I went away to college.
Have you ever been on air?
Yes, my first radio job was in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, which, as you all know, is famous one day a year. And so I was on the air weekends and weekend evenings generally. I also sold advertising in the summertime and put every dollar of commissions I made into the gas tank of my parents' 1973 Chrysler New Yorker as I was driving around Jefferson County trying to interest people in buying ads on the radio station. Did some play-by-play of Little League baseball and then did that again in college when I got to school. But that was my first stop, was at WPME in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania.
Well, I also have a radio background. I was still in high school actually the first time. I lived in Cleveland, and I was a board operator at an FM station that was cosmopolitan. We had all these people of different languages that would buy hours of time to come on and play their music and talk to their people, and they needed a board operator, and I was the board operator, and they had to point to me when they wanted the music because it was all in language I didn't understand. But that's how I started. That was back in 1968, and then I worked local radio before I came to Johnstown and got a job, 2 years of radio there, and then got a job in TV. So we've both been around for a while. As I was getting ready for this, I was thinking about, my relationship with television. And born in 1952, so I equate things in my life with TV because that's what TV was for a lot of us. Like as a child, I remember Saturday morning cartoons. I mean, you got up and you went out and you watched, cartoons all morning long. When I was in sixth grade, they wheeled a television set into our classroom so we could watch the coverage of the assassination of President Kennedy. As a teen, I was in my parents' living room watching the moon landing, fascinated by the fact that we could get as not as good as it was, but still a signal from the moon. And as an adult, you think of the terror attacks of 9/11. I remember vividly President Obama addressing the nation after Sandy Hook, and then, of course, January 6th and the things that have followed. So television has always been a vital part of my life. Would you agree that that's the nature of the business?
I would. We focused our company and my two companies in which I had an ownership stake in local television because we believe that that is kind of the bedrock of our communities, and that it's now the last bastion of journalism in our communities, where newspaper has become a de minimis industry, and local radio doesn't do the job it used to do in terms of providing local news. So where do you go to get your local reporting? It is in local television news. And so local television stations, in my view, are a local service business. We produce local content, which is our local news, our lifestyle shows, plus shows now on our streams, as we're doing right now, which is original local content, generally professionally produced, generally reliable, generally truthful, and we go home to those viewers on a local branded television station. I remember WTAJ when I was a young lad was WFBG,
Right.
and it was the first television station that I ever visited in my life, as I was a guest of the Big John Riley show because I
Mm.
had won some VFW Voice of America script writing contest. So we own a network, the CW, Nexstar does. We own a cable news network called News Nation. But the bedrock of what we do is local news and information in our markets. And in fact, the company today produces over 330,000 hours a year of local content. And that's really our calling card. And, we do two things as a local service business. We produce this content, and then we help local businesses sell things. That's our reason to exist. Yes, we rent programming from a network and we rent programming from syndicators and we don't own any of that. We just rent it and try and monetize it with ad sales. But the bedrock of what we do is local news, sports, and weather. And so I was around, obviously, in the business before there was the Fox network. And there were television stations like WGN in Chicago, which we own, KTLA in Los Angeles, which we own, independent stations that built a behemoth local news operation. And that's how they chose to serve the community rather than passing through network programming. But so I, there will be local TV stations. There were TV stations before there were networks. There'll be TV stations if the networks go away, and we've invested the entire proceeds of this company in building local news across the country and local television stations that produce local news. And as I say, in the media business, we're in the least sexy but most sticky part of the media ecosystem. And what I mean by that is we have relationships. People go home to watch Marty. They go home to watch WTAJ. Nobody goes home to watch a Nexstar TV station or CBS in Johnstown, Altoona. They go home to watch WTAJ. They know who that is. They trust who that is, and we have a responsibility with that. And now with WTAJ Plus, and we're launching Plus. Streams across all of our local markets. It's just another way to reach the viewers with content that maybe doesn't fit neatly into a half-hour newscast, and to reach the viewers and the consumers and the advertisers where they are, whether it's on the phone, on a little screen in the office, on a big screen in the den. But it's our responsibility to reach the viewers where they are, and that's why this business is evolving. But as I tell people, we don't have red carpet, premieres like the Emmys or things like that, but we'll go to the opening of a new supermarket or a new furniture store or a car dealer because that's in service to our local community. Excuse me. So the business, I think, will continue to survive. The what we do doesn't change, which is serve the communities with information and helping local businesses to sell stuff. But the how we do it is changing and will continue to change.
So, what's the future of linear TV? We went home when we were kids and we sat in the living room, which or wherever the family gathered. That's where the television was. Will that continue like it's been, or doesn't that have to change with the way we're moving, or will it stay the same?
Well, my opinion, our company's opinion, is that people will watch live TV. What they watch on TV live is live TV, live news, live sports, live award shows, live competition shows. What they don't have a motivation to do now is watch scripted entertainment live because they can watch that on a streaming platform. They can record it on their DVR. And so we've seen a big move away from watching sitcoms and detective shows live. People will binge those on the weekend when they have time, but people still tend to watch live news and live sports live. And we think that's where the future of linear TV will go. Look, we built the CW from an entertainment network that basically ran, comic book shows, fanboy shows, into a network that now 40% of the programming is sports because everybody understood the value of the broadcast audience. And the one thing we have, which we will always have, is ubiquitous reach. Our signal is available free over the air to everyone in the viewing area that has an antenna or has a pay TV subscription they pay for. But the fact that all of these streamers exist because they don't have what we have, which is the ability to reach the entire population of the market or the country.
The company just made a successful bid, I believe it was $6 billion to buy Tegna, and it's either 57 or 67. You know the number. I can't, I'm sorry. But they have a stable full of very successful television stations. Now, you have to get approval. That's how this stuff works. Any kind of an acquisition of that size just doesn't happen overnight. But everything I've read, you're pretty confident you're going to get the necessary approvals. So tell me, assuming it happens, what does Nexstar look like the moment the ink is dry on that contract that you signed to buy Tegna?
Well, we become a company with 265 TV stations in 225 markets, reaching about 80% of the United States. We'll have close to 17,000 employees. We will produce in excess of 450,000 hours a year of local news and local content. And it's just continuing to build out across the country what we have built out in Johnstown, Altoona, in Harrisburg, in Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, in Tampa, Portland, San Diego. You pick it. It's continuing to make an investment in local news, and we believe that for local news to survive, there needs to be big companies with solid balance sheets behind that to basically be able to continue that investment that we make in people and equipment.
Right.
And yes, it means smaller companies get consolidated up over time, but I'd rather have. I use the example that Walmart may have put A&P out of business and Pathmark and Jewel Osco, but Walmart is a competitor to Amazon in delivery and products and services, and Walmart, by getting big, is now big enough to be a competitor where none of those individual grocery stores, you could add pen traffic into that. We're able to compete with Amazon. And so, yes, you have fewer choices, but you have a local choice as composed to a national choice. And our thesis is that, left unabated and rules not changing to allow us to compete on a level playing field, that, ultimately your news will be delivered via a chatbot, of unseen origin. And so from our perspective, it's an investment in the industry. It's an investment to scale our company, but it's also to protect local journalism and see that it survives.
Let me ask you about that, Perry. You know that in general, there's not a lot of trust in media sources now within the public, and they've been swayed by all sorts of things from different people and different angles. But the fact is, it's tougher. And I always tell people I'm old school. I'm one of those guys that said, yeah, being first is cool, but I'd rather be right and then be first. And that's the way I've always gone about, my business. But people don't trust us as much. Will they trust us even less if there's 2 or 3 groups across the country that own all the local news producing television stations? And that then leads to, well, maybe Perry Sook's own political agenda or the Nexstar board is going to drive what we do. How would you answer people who may be concerned about big media getting even bigger and feeding us whatever they want?
Well, I would say that over 30 years, and starting with one TV station in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and getting to the 201 TV stations that we operate today, no one in the company at the corporate level has ever mandated content, has mandated a point of view. I would challenge you to, tell me what you think my political affiliations are, because if I'm doing my job well, nobody knows.
Yeah, and I tell people that all the time, and I agree, but people always say, well, you believe, okay, whatever, believe what you want to believe. And every time I get challenged, it's funny because I'm always thinking to myself, well, no, I'm on the opposite side of that, but go ahead if you think that that's what's going on. So it's not a concern for you?
I think our company has been built on the strength of the opportunities, the challenges, the wants and needs of the folks in Altoona and Johnstown and State College and Du Bois are different than those of the folks that live in Portland, Oregon, Tampa, Florida, Burlington, Vermont, and Champaign, Illinois, just markets where we own TV stations. So we operate a very decentralized approach, and we expect that our local managers, our local news directors, our local journalists will build those newscasts that are representative of the values and the needs and the problems of those communities, and that's what we'll report on. And generally, in every study that we have done or every study that we have seen, local journalism is seen as the most trusted element of all of journalism. It's the national networks that are
Yeah.
seen to
Yep.
be opinionated, one side or the other. And I feel, again, I was in Washington D.C. recently, and I went in to visit a Republican congresswoman, and she told me she thought that News Nation was way too conservative as a cable network. The next meeting I was in, I was criticized that it was way too liberal and that was obviously in a Republican office. And I said, well, then I must be doing my job, because we have irritated both sides of the aisle. And so our goal is to produce fact-based journalism. I would rather be right than first. And that's the ethos by which I think all of our journalists, and by the way, the company today employs over 5,500 journalists across the country,
Right.
which is more journalists than any other news organization in the world employs in the United States. And that will only get larger with the acquisition of Tegna. So listen, I would rather, well, in your marketplace, the NBC station that you used to work for produces content for the Fox station. Okay, so is it a bad thing that Fox doesn't have its own, and ABC don't have their own newsroom, or the fact that you can put news on those stations by operating, I like to say, two newspapers off of the same printing press? That gives the Fox station a voice and news when the NBC station could be airing news. So I think that what we need to preserve in the country is local choice and a local voice. And the way to do that is by allowing companies to get bigger and stronger to be able to weather the storm of big tech, which I can tell you is very real and only going to increase if the rules are not relaxed to allow us to compete on a level playing field.
This is sort of a personal question. What are the odds that at some point in the future, not in my lifetime because I'm too old, I won't be around, but there'll be an AI anchor on your logo? There's a lot of talk, but you see what they're doing with AI, and there are stations that are consolidating, and you don't really know. I mean, if AI is done right, you can't tell if it's real or not. I mean, and I read a lot about that people are concerned
Sure.
about that. Do you think that's something in the future that will become a thing?
Not in my company,
Okay.
not in Nexstar. I think we will use AI for research. It can save the time rather than have to call out to 14 different police departments every morning as soon as you show up. AI can query, all of the activity
Yep.
logs that come from those. Now, it's no substitute for AI can't double source. That's what we need to do. We need to confirm and verify before we report anything. We use AI in our business processes to make the business more um, efficient, but I don't think you'll ever see an AI anchor in front of the camera in Nexstar unless it is clearly labeled as such, and we are doing it as an alternative or an experiment or something like that. But I don't think you'll see AI in front of the camera. That's one of the reasons we need to get big, is to keep that from happening.
And so I assume from listening to you that linear television station, WTAJ, Channel 10, is going to be here forever. It's not going anywhere. Even if we're streaming, will our programming originate on the streaming side, or will they share? I mean, I know what we're doing now. We have to fill a lot of time on the Plus channel because we're doing it trying to locally generate. And newscasts are being simulcast or showing up on the Plus. Will that always be the case, that we'll both be showing the same thing at the same time? Or how, for people, we tell them all the time about WTAJ Plus. We tell them get a Roku or get a Fire Stick or get
Right.
Apple TV, and I'm not sure they quite understand what that means. But one thing I hear all the time is that mean that Channel 10 is going away, and that's why I asked you that. So will we share resources? Will we be the same, or will we be different in 5 years?
Well, I think, again, I look at it a little differently. What is the business we're in? We produce local content.
Right.
We help local businesses sell stuff. That's our reason to exist. And so um, let's assume we have a big room of people in WTAJ that are producing content. And I'm relatively indifferent as to whether it goes out on WTAJ Plus or out on the 6 o'clock news or is, an alert to a phone or an app or a website. We need to serve all of the viewers in all of those places with our professionally produced content.
Right.
I think that our spectrum is very valuable, and for that reason, we will always have spectrum, and we will always have a linear television channel on that spectrum. But I do think as we migrate to ATSC 3.0, which is kind of the next generation of television transmission, that there are opportunities for us to do high-speed data transmission and serve other businesses in other ways than just selling advertising. And I think the potential of that from a revenue perspective is huge. And it's much like I live here in Texas now. And so it's much like having shale gas and shale oil under the ground. It took 20 years to figure out how to hydraulically frack and horizontally drill to monetize that asset. But I think of our spectrum as our mineral rights. And I think over time, you'll see us develop new applications for data casting, for connected TV, maybe for on-screen navigation that is real time, maybe even projected on your screen, on your windshield if it's a self-driving car. I'm not going to determine what those applications are, but I have, for all intents and purposes, the toll road that people will have to drive on to be able to monetize those. And so we could sit here for a half hour and talk about all the different potential use cases of our spectrum, in addition to our primary video channel, which by FCC regulations we are required to provide, and we will continue to provide. But I think, again, if we have another revenue stream from data casting, that's just more revenue into the company to underscore and support our local journalism efforts and ensure that they survive and, dare I say, prosper. And so it's all work worth doing from my perspective because of the essential services we provide.
Will the way we watch television change from the perspective of, are we going to be paying more for it because we're going to have to use auxiliary means if we're going to watch it on a plus channel? Does that factor into any of the planning that you're doing as you're looking ahead?
Well, I think it's interesting that all of these streaming services, whether it's Peacock or Paramount Plus or Disney Plus or Discovery Plus, HBO Max, they've all spent billions, and they've all lost, I should say, billions and billions of dollars. And now, if you happen to be a subscriber to Spectrum, they're now basically offered free with purchase. And so it's just a different way of bundling. We basically unbundled the bundle only to put it back together again. And so if you're a Spectrum customer, which is Charter, you can choose to watch the CBS affiliate, or you can choose to watch Paramount Plus on a stream, basically through the same at the same time through the same subscription. So I see bundling was a matter of convenience, and cable started in Pennsylvania
Yes.
in our lifetimes, and so it was a reception device. And then they imported some other signals, because I remember in Du Bois we got the Altoona and Johnstown stations. We also got the Pittsburgh stations, and we got two stations out of New York that had the Yankees and the Mets, Picks and WR. And that was the basic cable, plus PBS, which I understand is unfortunately going to be potentially going away in Johnstown, Altoona. But the point is that then new channels became, and I've been in this business since the late 70s, and so I love to tell people I've been working in this business. Everybody thinks it's dying now, for almost 50 years, and it's
we're still around, aren't we? We're still around. Yeah, we're still around. We're not going anywhere. Hey, Perry, this has been fascinating. Thank you for taking time out of your very, very busy day. And as a fan of television, I'm looking forward to see what's next. And I know you're going to be a big part of it. So thank you for sharing with us today.
Well, thanks for inviting me. Enjoyed being with you, and go Penn State. We look forward to the Nittany Lions having a great football season the rest of this year.
Well done, sir. Well done. Perry Sook, the CEO and board chairman of Nexstar. Perry, thank you, and thank you for watching.
Thank you. All the best.